Yes, Lyle Mouton Sr., my son, the athlete. Basketball, he was the #1 player in the state of Louisiana in high school, and went on to LSU with basketball scholarship, played with Shaquille O'Neal and Chris Jackson. And then after 2 years, starting on the varsity, on the university team, he decided he wanted to try baseball, because we all thought that he was better more dominant at baseball than basketball. So he tried out for the team, and 2 years later, they won the World Series, and he was named to the all-tournament team. But his dad was a better ball player than him. I grew up in Fightonville, Lafayette, and it's called Fightonville for a reason. Way back then, Lafayette city limits, the end of city limits was Congress Street. And if you crossed Congress, that was outside the city limits. And Lafayette had a policy, there was no fighting in the city. So the only way you could fight was to go across Congress in that area, and then disputes, you could settle disputes there. And that's how it got to be Fightonville. Oh, I thoroughly enjoyed it. We were all poor, but we didn't know it, I grew up going to Lafayette Parish school system, public school system, for my first 8 years of education. And then I went on to a parochial school, Holy Rosary High School, for 4 years, and then went to the University of Southern University in Baton Rouge for 4 more years. So I used to tell my wife, I have a distinction of never ever going to class with persons of another persuasion. Wow. I've only been in class with blacks. Well, it was difficult. I remember having to leave from my home with my mother, my dad worked all the time, so my mother, it was time to take me to the doctor or to go and pick up special items in the downtown Lafayette area. Boy Scout equipment, you can only get that at Hyman's, special groceries or shoes for the kids. So we would take the bus. It was 10 cents to ride the bus. And it was pretty rough, because if you walked, if someone was of the other persuasion was coming your way, you automatically bet your head and you crossed the street. You didn't go face to face with them. So it was pretty rough, but we made it through. Yeah, Hyman was everything. When he originally came, the original Hyman, he was poor. He was selling clothes out of his station wagon, and he rented a room on near Clinton and Lamar. In that area, there was a hotel. So he was living out of his car, and became an empire from that. But the grocery shopping was tremendous, because it was a big savings, and the department store was next door. You can get all your patterns for sewing, and unique things were all there. Well, later on in life, after during my college deal, after my freshman year of college, my dad was pretty influential in the area. He knew everybody. And he spoke to one of the guys at First National Bank in Lafayette to get his son a job during the summer. And I got a job. And it was white collar, it was leading up to be a teller. And everybody at the organization thought a lot about me. And then after my tenure for the summer, Otto Broussard was the manager, and he said, Lyle, when you graduate, you come straight here. We're going to get you a job. Everybody will love you. You'll be fine. I said, oh, no. I said, when I graduate from college, I want to conquer the world. So it's not going to be in Lafayette where I'm going to lay my feet. But I said, these guys, that's custodians there, 3 or 4 of them that I knew. One of them was the first black athlete at UL. Hardly anybody knows that. But he was a track star at UL, but he was a marathon runner. And that was before the famous Bolamar and Marvin Winkler and Elvin Ivory and Leslie Scott were the ones in basketball that integrated. But he was on the cross country team.
Wow.
Curtis James was his name. I would not like to mention too many people because I'd like their permission, but he was recognized and reputed to be the first. And then the other guys that were working there, I told Mr. Broussard, you train them, they can be some great tellers. And they tried that, and two of them became multimillionaires. The people in Lafayette, one of them spoke French, and it was a black guy at the front, at the teller's windows. His line was always longer than all the other lines because they trusted him with the money, the transactions. They were making their home payments. They were, cashing their checks. And he wound up, one of the insurance guys recognized how popular he was and had him come to sell insurance. And from then he went on to do great things. And
wow.
Yeah, he's very successful.
That's great.
So you never know where your fortune will come through.
Absolutely.
But during that time, several of the white girls, a lot of them, their parents were wealthy people, oil field people, business people. So we were a team, and we were doing accounting work and that nature. And we got close. And several times, because my dad was popular at the bank, some of the older tellers, white ladies, would say, we like your son a great deal, but we got to caution you. Those girls are too friendly with him, and we don't like that. So they had a special powwow for me to control myself. So my hands were tied. Well, I'm very proud of my culture, and it comes from it's like a gumbo. I've got, whites, blacks, Indian, all within my mixture. So, I just stand on the fence, I can adapt.
Yeah. Cool.
I had to fight a lot as a youngster because I had to prove that I could fight. Because my playmates and all would challenge me a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
Because.
Well, my complexion back then, but it all came out in the wash. I got a sister that's blonde and blue-eyed, and
Wow.
my dad. You see him and you look at Clark Gable. I mean,
Yeah.
at one time they wanted him to go to California and to be a sit-in for Clark Gable.
Wow.
My mother said, oh no, y'all not gonna leave me with all these 5 kids. He'll never come back. He couldn't leave.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty prevalent in this area. The musicians, unbelievable, worldwide known. Matter of fact, my father had a grocery store, and one of the first employees was a busboy. And my dad hired him as a youngster, might have been 11, 12 years old at most. And that was Stanley Durrell. My daddy nicknamed him Buckwheat. Bought him his first organ because he loved instruments. They lived cat a corner from my dad's store, so they had an old piano on the front porch because there were a lot in the family. They had no room for a piano in the house, so they would put it on the porch, and it had many keys missing, and he could still make music with a half a piano.
Wow.
And my uncle was a musician. He played with Lionel Hampton. Later on in Lafayette, he did funerals quite a bit. And because he was fluent in French, he would sing French prayers. People would love his funerals. And that was black and white people would request him because they can identify with praying in French. And he would sing it, and he had 3 of his kids there. One played saxophone, and the 2 girls sang. And, he was a performer, though, because he had spent some time in California, so he knew how to perform. But he'd have a towel on his shoulder, and he would sing so much like he was crying for the person that was being buried, and everybody else in the audience would cry. And he didn't really know who that was, but, he was a performer.
Yeah.
I grew up in our area. My dad owned a grocery store later on in life, but early in life, we had our own chicken in the yard. My dad, raised, we had crops. We had Mouton on the vines. We had okra. We had eggplants. So we had our chicken that we wanted. And my dad also had a Jersey cow. He won in a dance contest, so he wound up selling milk. He would come in twice, early in the morning and late at night. He would milk the cows, and his kids, my brothers and sisters, would wash all the bottles and clean them up so that we could sell them in the neighborhood. And all time of night, people were knocking and they would want a quart of milk. It was a nickel or a dime for the quart. And so he was always promoting.
Very cool.
Yeah, well, they would loosen up. I mean, they had long days, hard days of work, and when it was time to celebrate and to unwind, they would lose themselves in the music. And the more they would dance, the more the musician would perform. So it was like a right hand washing the left, and together they washed the face. They'd have them on the porch because it was too hot in the house. Mm-hmm. So, there would be dust. I mean, when they would start, it was, grass on the ground, but they danced so much that it would kill the grass, and you'd have a lot of dust. So your shoes were dusty. A lot of people dance without shoes, but those were great times. Looking back at it now, yeah. Yeah, no, we spoke English. My grandfather did not speak any English, but we spoke English. No, it was Creole. He was born and raised in a little area of Lafayette, outside of Lafayette, called Coonville. It's between Lafayette and Breaux Bridge, on the Breaux Bridge Highway, Carmel Avenue. So he didn't speak any English. We used to laugh because my uncles were ball players, and when one of them would hit the ball, he would say, "Stanley, my boy, she hit that ball." And so to us it was strange. And at one time he was working as a custodian at one of the theaters in Lafayette, and he began to market himself because it was 15 cents to get in. He would charge a nickel, and he would have the back door. And one time someone gave him a dime, and he threw him out because he thought they were trying to cheat him because that dime was smaller than the nickel. So he said, "Oh no, you need a nickel to get in." And I'd have to fight during the day because people come to the theater. If they left a jacket, sweater, anything there, he would bring it home and give it to my parents or my uncles and aunts. And so we would wear it to school, and the next day I get in a big fight because I had somebody's jacket and I didn't know where it came from. But those were some good days.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother in Baton Rouge, we look forward to the days when she would come in. She made the crawfish bisque, and I thought it was world famous. I would rather eat that than anything else in the world. And the way she did it, and she also made fruitcakes. When she would come to town, my dad would get the family, and we'd all go to Hyman's because you could buy the dates and the prunes and all the fruits that was needed to make fruitcakes. And she'd have a cheesecloth on top and rum, dap in rum, and it was the greatest ever. My paternal grandmother, because she had 5 boys, well, 7 boys really. One passed away at an early age, and the other one. But she was good with the oven. She would bake a coon, and it would taste like a ham.
What?
Unbelievable, with sweet potatoes. And my uncles, her sons, 2 of them went to California to live, and they'd come back and they would eat a whole one by themselves. It was that good. It brought back memories.
Wow.
And then my grandfather on my dad's side had a supermarket. So they would butcher hogs so he could sell at the grocery store. And we made the crackling and the red boudin back then, and the hog-head cheese, everything that my cardiologist said I should stay away from. That was my favorite. And my mother was the queen of red beans. I mean, she could make red beans like you've never seen before. And stuffed Mouton, because we had that in the yard, and she would mix it with some shrimp and ground meat and breadcrumbs on the top, and
It's one of my favorites.
unbelievable.
Did your grandma stuff the crawfish heads for the
Yes, yeah, yeah. I mean, she had it down to a science. You know, I would help her in cleaning the heads, making sure she would use a little Clorox or something in the water to really get all the phlegm out of it. But we stuffed the heads. I mean, it was unbelievable. Even the little paws she would make with the gravy to go on top, you know. And when you bought crawfish, back then they would give you a little container of fat that you could use to make your gravy. Well, when they wouldn't have fat, she would use bacon, grind it up real fine, and that would gel the stuffing inside of the crawfish. She would substitute the fat. Well, the fat from the bacon made the fat that she needed. And, you know, the stuffing was great, and she would roll it in breadcrumbs and put it in the oven and then take it out. And then we would have the garlic and garlic powder and all, making the gravy. But I mean, that's to die for. I have the recipe, so
Oh.
yeah.
Can you make it?
Oh yes, it just takes so much work. I mean, my fingers would be all cut up from having to do the tedious work. But I make it once a year. I've got 3 kids, 2 daughters and a son, and I'll save a half a dozen or a dozen for each one of them in the freezer, and they look forward to it.
Oh man. Well, save me one.
I got you. You can't eat one. There's no way.
No, well, that's trying to be
Yeah.
modest.
Well, I read somewhere that there's left side, left wing, you got right wing, but they're all part of the bird. So one without the other is not, a bird with just a left wing is only going to be able to turn right, So you need them both working together. That's one thing I'd like. And the thing I would like the community to do is to take someone and invite them to your home that you're not used to having at your house. Have dinner with them. Let them see your family, you see them. And then hopefully they'll invite you to their home. Because that's something that my wife and I do on a regular basis. And we try to do it, 2 or 3 times a year, maybe 4 times a year. And that's how we develop an association with people that normally we would not visit with. So my thing would be to invite someone of another persuasion at your home for dinner. Maybe watch a baseball game, maybe watch a football game, a parade or something, and interact with them in that setting.
Yeah.
And it goes a long way into developing, people skills. Well, primarily, we're not here alone. You're going to need someone. Don't just help someone for yourself. I mean, help someone, but also remember, take care of yourself also.
That's great.
The right hand wash the left, and together they wash the face.
That's right.
It's hard to wash your face with one hand.